Hello everyone, it's Amy, and welcome back for week 36 of the new Build Your Stash and Craft. Today we are going to make scrap monsters, and these are scrap monsters. They're made with scraps of paper. No matter how small they are, you can use them, and they're just something that is really fun if you lose your mojo. They're fun to do with your grandkids or your children. They're just fun to do all by yourself. I think that they're fun to make them cute and pop them into a card that you're sending to someone or put them on someone's desk at work. They're fun to name them and put their little names on the back. There's all sorts of things that you can do with them, and it's just a very easy and yet really fun project to do. I'm also going to show you how to make Bubbie dolls. Now, Bubbie dolls I normally make with fabric, not flat, but actually like stuffed Bubbie dolls. But I just think that they're so cute, and I started making them with the scraps, like the scrap monsters, just because they kind of reminded me one time when I did my scraps just straight across, that they reminded me of my Bubbie dolls, which I use, I sew fabric together. But they're just so cute to do. And this one is kind of a cross between a Bubbie doll and a scrap monster because it's got little antennas. So I just think that they're fun. I think that these are super fun, and these are just very sweet. They just, to me, these feel good. So that's what we're going to do today. And it's, like I said, it's very easy. Great thing to do if you've lost your mojo. So we're just going to set these aside. And so what you're going to need to do is you're just going to need to take some of your scrap paper. We have our cutoffs from our last week's feathers. I've just taken other pieces of some of the tissue that we had done some painting on, and that was the leftovers. This is a drop paper, some dictionary paper, just any of your papers that you have, and they can be scrap papers or just papers that you have that that you have pieces of that you just want to use. So I like to try and just rip them up ahead of time because to me it's easier. Also, I kind of keep a little box with all of my scraps in it so that I can just take those out. And if I need to rip them up, I can. Now, these are all kind of ripped in strips because a lot of them I went ahead and I made out of larger pieces of paper, so I just ripped them in strips. But you can use all different shapes and sizes. You don't need to do it in a line. Like I said, let's see here. Let's look at a couple of these. So try and find some that are a little, see, like this one here. This one was just all different shapes of paper, and so was this one. In those shapes, I just glued them down onto a piece of paper in the collage fashion. And then I use them for the Bubbie dolls and for the scrap monsters. But this, you can do them in a straight line also. Whatever you feel like doing is what you do. So we'll need our water glue. Put some parchment under your paper. And it's good to have two pieces of parchment, one to work on, and then one that as soon as you're done, you can lift it off and set it on the next one. It helps it not to stick as bad. It's not supposed to stick to parchment anyways, but that just makes it so that you don't have to worry about it at all. So, and then what we're going to do is we are just going to, I usually do it by taking a section of about a couple inches maybe of my paper and just go from one side all the way to the other. And just get it all covered with glue. And that's why I like to have my scraps done up ahead of time so that I can just take them and place them on there. Now, between each one, I don't go ahead and place one and then another and another, because if I were to place this on top of here, it's overlapping right here and there's no glue there. So each time that I put down a piece of paper, I go ahead and put my top layer of water glue on it. I'm a firm believer that when you use water glue, you should water glue top and bottom. And in this case, you really need to if you're going to overlap, because you want to make sure that where they're overlapped, that there is glue on the piece you're setting it on top of. Now, see, there's glue all over all of this. So, and I'm just going to put this one this way because it fits right there. And just go ahead and do this until you get all the way to the far side. And now I'm leaving these hang over quite a bit. You really don't need to do that. I leave them hang over just a little bit so that I know that they went all the way to the edge. But you don't need to, I kind of went a little far over there. And if you get to the other end, and see, I know now that I'm on top of there and I'm on top of there, but I know that this piece is going to be glued down because I know that I went ahead and put glue on top of all of those pieces. So I know that whether it's on the paper that I've already glued or it is on top of one of the other pieces, I'm going to rip that one off because it was sticking out there way far. I know it's going to have glue top and bottom. And then I just try and kind of mix them up so that my colors aren't all right next to each other. That's totally however you want to do it. And you don't have to, you know, totally go in a straight line. I grabbed a piece of blue here. I don't want it so close to all that blue, so I'm going to stick it at the other end. Now, these are some of the kind of faux brushes, so they are just crumbled up, crushed up Easter egg coloring. So when you put your water glue on, they spread a little bit, which is totally fine. Even if you have it on your paintbrush and it gets on the next piece of paper, because this is supposed to be just kind of mix and match, so you don't have to worry about if you have something that's water soluble and your water glue makes it move. That's totally fine. But like that was a piece of tissue paper that we used. This is a piece of my drop paper. Now this is a very dark piece of paper, but that's okay because, you know, you don't use this in one great big huge sheet. So it's nice to have some dark spots and some light spots and overlapping. And if you want, you can do it just all in straight lines or very mix match like this. I'm going to stick that one right in there. And just make sure that you get all the way underneath every piece and over top of every piece, and it will be good. Now, the only thing about this is they do have to set. That's the only bad part about it, is you have to let them dry. But if you take the time to do one, you can set it aside and let it dry, and then work on another one, and then maybe hit it with your blow dryer, hit it with your heat gun. We did get a heat gun, didn't we? So you could hit it with your heat gun to help dry it. I normally don't do that right away. I normally let it, that might have been a little dry right there, so I went ahead and scooched a little glue underneath. And let's see, I want something that's a bit different color. And when I get all the way to where I have already put my glue, then I go ahead and put another couple inches of glue and start all over again. Now, if you want to just set them aside and let them dry, you know, air dry, you can do that too. And once they're dry, then I put them in a heavy book if I'm not using them right away, and that just helps them flatten up a little bit. They get a little bit wrinkly, but I don't always wait for them to, like, I don't always put them under a book and let them sit for a while. A lot of times I do just go ahead and get them dry and then use them right away. So that's totally your choice how you want to do that. Okay, maybe just a little bit more, and this section is done. And I'm not going to do the whole page because you don't want to sit here and watch me just collage a whole page, but I did just kind of want to remember to give you the tips about, you know, only do like a section that's going to stay wet while you're working on it. If you have an area where things dry really fast, maybe don't do like as much as I did here. Maybe do just a little less than that so that it stays wet. And then just make sure as you go across the page that it is still wet before you put down your next little piece. So there we go. We're going to call this good for now. And then what I would do is when this whole page was done, then I would just very carefully lift it up while it's still wet like this. I lift it up. For now, I'm just going to flip this one over because I don't have another piece of parchment here. Just lift it up and then just lightly lay it on another piece of parchment. Don't press it down or anything. And that way it's not going to stick down as bad. Let me see. So once you get that all done and it's dry, then it winds up looking like this. And it's already, because you collaged it with the water glue underneath and over top, it's all done. You don't need to do anything else with it. If you forgot to and you were just doing it underneath, you would need to go ahead and make sure that you put a coat of water glue on the top before you used it. But, you know, to me, like I said, if you go ahead and do each piece on the top after you set it down, then you know the other piece is glued to it, because now we're going to make it into a scrap monster. And by doing that, we're going to cut it all up. And if these were not glued underneath where they overlapped, those are going to lift up. And then, you know, you could have a problem with pieces falling off and having a mess that way. Let's see. Here's my scissors. And so then what I do now, when I do my Bubbie dolls, I normally like if I have stripes, I kind of like them to go this way. That's just because that's the way that I sew them, is with strips of fabric that go this way. So that's just a me thing in my head. You don't have to, you know, do anything like that. But what I also do is, now you can turn it over. And in order to get the shape that I use of a Bubbie doll, a lot of times I just do a figure 8 and then just kind of round it in like that. So I did that here and colored the whole thing in. So if you want to have a pattern, that way you can just go ahead and cut that out and you will have a pattern that you can trace around. Now, it would be better for a pattern to do it out of cardboard, but you might want to do a few on paper if you don't have a ton of scrap cardboard around. You may want to do it on a piece of scrap paper until you get the shape you want, and then do it on your cardboard. But, you know, I just go ahead and do it and color it in, and then if I think, oh, I don't really like that shape, like the neck needs to be a little thinner, the head needs to be a little bigger, I just go ahead and use my black marker until I get it the way that I like it. And then you can just take that and put it on there and trace around it. Now, I do like to, you know, try and, you know, because I've taken the time to glue all of this down, you know, I like to be frugal with my paper and go ahead and, you know, get close to the edges when I'm cutting out my scrap monsters or tracing my Bubbie dolls, you know, so that I can get as much use out of it as I can. But the other thing is that keep the scraps of this too. And I'll show you that in a minute. So you're just going to go ahead and cut it out. And there we go. Now we have a little Bubbie doll. That's the start. So, but the thing is, keep your scraps, because all of these little scraps right here, I use those. So like here, I used them to make these little ears, and these pieces were the same. They were cut off of something, and then I doodled on them so that they looked the same. But these were just, they were cut-offs, like this right here and this right here. And so you don't have to use it exactly like that. You can say, well, you know, I want it to be kind of rounded and kind of have a little bit of a horn like that. So there you go. Now you've got one little horn. And where's the other piece I had? If you want them to be about the same, you could take another piece and just go ahead. Now this one's not going to be big enough, so I'd wait till I have another scrap and just go ahead and kind of cut the same shape. But you'll want to flip it over if you want that to be a little like a horn or ear, whatever you want to call them, so that when you cut it out, you'll have reverse, so that one goes this way and one goes that way. So just remember, if you're going to trace it or even just cut around it, remember, if you want them to be reverse of each other, just flip it over when you're doing the next side. This one would match here, and then if you flip it over and cut that one out, it would match there. So that's how you do those, and that's what you do with those. Now this one right here is a little bit different, but maybe I would use it to do a little arm like I did on this scrap monster, or use it for a little horn. See, his horns are not the same, and they're also different sizes. So I use those little scraps. See, here's a little teeny tiny scrap that looks a lot like that one right there. See, it just covers that right up. You know, they're just, you'd think that, oh, that's not worth anything, but it's really cute on there. So that's why we keep our scraps. And then to cut a scrap monster, I always do it upside down, and I'm going to just kind of come up here. I know that underneath on this one, we're a little bit more, not totally straight lines. So I'm just going to come up there so that we'll have one that's a little different. And I'm just going to cut a shape. And the shape doesn't have to be anything special. I'm just going to cut a shape. I have to decide how big do I want my scrap monster to be. So there's my shape. And this is my scrap monster. Now, I decide now, is that the top? And this is the bottom? Is this the top? And this is the bottom? Is this the top? Is that the top? So you look at it, and actually, I think I like it this way. I think that I'm going to kind of call this legs. Then you decide, where do you want to put your face? Do you want it right in the center? Or, like, maybe you want a face that kind of is looking off this way, because it's kind of shaped like a horse or something. So you just decide where you want to put your face. And the way that I do my faces, and see then, now look, we've got that piece and that piece that are kind of in our way for cutting, so we're going to just leave those there. So for faces, I just go ahead and draw random shapes. Remember, if you make yourself a template, go ahead and keep that and put it in your template folder. So I just go ahead and I just draw shapes. Circle, triangle, and they don't even have to be any kind of a perfect shape. I do different shapes and different sizes. And you'll find that you don't like them all. That's okay. You don't have to use them all. But just go ahead and make a few shapes, and then just decide how you want to do your eyes. So there's lots of little different ways to do your eyes. With my Bubbie dolls, I always do them like this because I just think that they look, you know, sleepy and content, and I like that on my Bubbie dolls. That's what their faces look like. But my scrap monsters, I like them to have all kinds of monstrous faces. So then I just go ahead and, you know, if you want to do like the little Bubbie doll face, because we have a small Bubbie doll. Let me see if this face, see that face is not even going to be small enough. I need one smaller than that. So I'm going to come over here and make a smaller one. But you just go ahead and maybe give them a couple little eyelashes, a little tiny nose, and a smile. And I like to give them a little curl on their forehead. And you can use regular, let's see, you can just use regular pens to do the decoration of their faces. I don't like how thick that I got that, but we're going to cut it out so it doesn't matter. But to try and use this marker, which is a little bit fat, in this little tiny face, you can just use a regular black pen. And again, because this is going to be a Bubbie doll, I'm going to give it my little content face. Give it a little swoopy curl. You can give it a little round nose if you want to, and a smile. And so you can just go ahead and do all sorts of, you know, big eyes that are looking down. You can do big eyes that are looking up. So simple. You can do big eyes that are cross-eyed. Just because whatever you want. Maybe give it a little like W for a nose and a smile, maybe a crooked smile and no nose. Maybe we'll give this one because it kind of reminds me of, what do you call that? That Halloween candy. Give it a little bit of a, like it has white and then yellow and orange. So that type of thing. Noses can be circles or they can be little, you know, whatever kind of nose that you want. You can do a smile with lips. And just play. Just go ahead and play all different ways. And then what you can do is if you find some that you really, really like, copy them on a copy machine. And then you'll have them and you can use them over and over if you want to, or just copy them into a notebook so that you can go back and you can reference different ways that you've done eyes or different ways that you've done mouths. And if you look on the internet, I'm sure there's lots of ways that they color funny faces. And so you can do that. And then you do this and then you've got those ready to cut out and put on your scrap monster. Now I say, okay, so this is going to be my scrap monster. This little face would fit, but I don't really think that I want that cute little face on my scrap monster. I want something more like this one, and it will fit too. That one's kind of cute, but it's a little bit big. I think I'm going to use that one right there. So I'm just going to cut it out, and we're going to use water glue to put them on. Now, because I'm not sure what kind of a pen this is, because it doesn't feel like a ballpoint pen. Ballpoint doesn't usually smear, but that one might smear when we use the water glue. But if it does, then all we have to do is just take it off and do another one. So I cut around. You can leave the black on there if you want to. Like, be very, very careful. I normally just kind of cut it as close to the black as I can, because I don't want white on the outside of it. But then I go around it with the black pen to make sure that if there's any spot that does have white on the outside, or I cut all of the black off, then that just makes sure that the whole outline is black. On this one now, we have a little bit of white right there. But all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my black marker. Right here it's super thin, so I'm just going to kind of go up on my, here is where I had the white on the edge. And I'm going to go around the whole thing, because that also copies the, or colors the edge of that paper black, which with your colored background, you don't want it to be white. It's a little thin right here, so I'm just going to thicken it up a little bit. And there we go. I think that looks good. Nope, there's a spot here that I want to, there. And let's cut this one out. And these would be really cute. You could do them in like Christmas colors and put them in Christmas cards. You could do them for Halloween. The scrap monsters are really fun for Halloween. And give them to your friends. You could even do them like people do rocks. They paint rocks and they leave those in places. You could do little scrap monsters and just leave them around, maybe with a little wish on the back for people to find and take home with them. That would be fun too. Whoops. So see, she's now got a black mark on the side of her face. I'm going to trim that down a little bit. But it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm going to kind of trim that up like this and then still use it. And there we go. So the face is not a perfect oval or circle, but it will work on our Bubbie doll. Now, the one thing I have to say is it's too small. I don't like it. So you know what? I'm not going to put it on there if I don't like it. That one I really like. So that one's going to go on there. But before we do that, what I like to do is stitch them. So you can stitch them in all different sorts of ways. So you can just do like the straight stitch right along the edge of each different piece of paper. And don't forget that they would be sewed around the outside edge too. So you can do it like that. You can do it with little X's. Like it was sewn together like with a cross stitch. And that X on the outside would pretty much just be half of the X like that. There we go. So, and those are the two that I use most of the time, but I know there were some others that I used to do. Let me look and see. Oh, straight stitch this way. So let's, I'm going to finish this one. And just put the center of your X on the edge of that piece of paper, and that paper comes down here. So I'm going to go down there like that. And then you could do a straight stitch. We'll do a straight stitch on this one here, which is just half of a stitch on the top piece and half of a stitch on the bottom piece of paper. And because those are both straight stitched together, I'm going to straight stitch the edge of both of them. And sometimes I'll do each Bubbie doll or scrap monster. I usually do them all with the same stitch. So with this one, I'm kind of having to decide where do I put the stitches, like, because this one is stitched with this straight stitch, then I'm going to do it across the bottom, but now I have another piece of paper here and it's got that on the top of it. So if I were to say, well, if I sewed that piece on top of there, I still could sew the bottom of that piece with a cross stitch if I wanted, you know, but then I have to decide, you know, how am I going to show the sewing on those different pieces. And then we'll just do a straight stitch here. And like I said, just remember to go around the outside edge with whatever it is that you're doing. Like this one needs to have a stitch on there. So there we go. So that one is stitched. This one is not stitched. And actually kind of double check, because you will actually notice it afterwards, like, oh man, I didn't stitch that. And it doesn't really make that much of a difference. You can go in and do it later, but I like to try and make sure I get it done the first time. so that I don't have to worry about it. So there we go. Now we're going to put this on here. Now, with these ones, which we don't have in our stash, but maybe we'll get it sometime soon, but you may have at home. This is eyeshadow. So I just went ahead and I just colored. I colored his face like with a tan eyeshadow, and then I just colored, you know, his eyelids with silver. I had some yellow that I did his beak with, and then I think I just outlined it with a marker. But eyeshadow makes really pretty faces, so they can just be white. They don't have to be colored. But all of these were colored. These were colored with eyeshadow. And I just take the eyeshadow applicator and I just put it on there like that. And then this one wasn't. And they're just as cute with or without. It doesn't matter. So we're just going to decide, where do we want his face to be? And I'm thinking maybe right about there, because then maybe we'll figure out how to give him some arms. So to put his face on, we are just going to take a bit of water glue. That is a lot of water glue. And there we go. And you don't have to do the whole thing, because we have already water glued the whole top. So you can just do it where you're adding, because I want to add little arms, I think. So what did I do with our scraps? So here's some of our scraps. That one might make a cute arm. Oh, I think I like this one better. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll make it about the size I want it, but just a little bit longer, and then cut it off from the back. So if I put his arm on there like that, and I think I'm going to put some little fingers, like for a hand, I'm just going to do like that. And I'm not going to like make them rounded or anything, because he is a monster after all. So this one's going to be over here. I'm going to take off that part because it kind of looks like he's got muscles there. And I think maybe I want that hand to be just a little bit smaller. Maybe even shaped a little bit like this hand. So let's just kind of, not the whole thing, just mostly the hand. Kind of want to go at that angle. Go. And go ahead and give him some fingers on this one. And then decide how I want to overlap them. Or do I want to overlap them? Maybe we want his hands to just come together like that. Like he's got his hands just kind of put together or folded or whatever. And I like that. I like how that looks. So that's how I'm going to do that. But before I do that, I need to outline them, because we want them to show up and stand out from the background. So if you just draw around the edge of it, you will have a thin line around it. And I'm going to have to cut this off after I put it on, so I won't do anything there until after I cut it off. I'll have to remember to go back in and put black on that outside edge. So there we go. And then maybe a couple little stitches here. And on this one too, just where the papers come together. Alrighty. So now we're going to want some, ooh, almost spilt my water glue. Put some water glue on here. And I think that it was going to be this way. And like that. And then water glue on top. And then you can wait for him to dry and then turn him over and cut off those little extra bits. Or if you like the way that they look, you can just leave them out there also. But I think that looks kind of cute. So we're going to set him aside for now to dry. And I'm making a mess of my surface here. Let's see. See if I can wipe it off a little bit, because I've got glue everywhere. Where's my lid for that one? Okay, oh, there it is. So, got my Bubbie doll, but that face is too small. Looks like it might be all right. And like I said, you can take more time with it and really get one that you like a lot, and then use your copy machine to copy it, because there's nothing wrong with copying your artwork. It's your artwork, but a lot of people think, oh, well, I have to do everything freehand every time. You don't. So, and you know, there are times where I want to draw something that I may draw and erase and draw and erase and draw and erase, because drawing is not my forte. Until I get it just how I want it. But now I've got all these erasure marks on it. So I will put it on top of a clean sheet of paper, use some carbon paper, and I will trace it. It is my own work. And I had an older artist teach me this a long time ago, because I watched her do it and I'm like, you're like tracing that? And she said, yeah, it's my work. And, you know, and I don't want all this erasing on here. And I wanted to work on it till I got it exactly how I wanted it. And now I'm going to trace it on a clean sheet. So there is our Bubbie doll, and that looks pretty good. So, and this one is awfully big. First things first, though, I am going to go around the outside edge of this. To give it detail. And then I'm going to use the smaller pen, because that's small, to put my stitching on here. And I am just going to sew it with a running stitch. And I just follow the edges of the paper. And even though I put that dark line on the outside, you can choose whether you want to do your running stitch around the edges or not. I like to, but it looks okay either way. And a lot of times what I do is I just go ahead, because I'm going to use the straight stitch through the whole thing, and because I follow the contour of whatever the papers look like, I know that the outside edge is going to go around just like this, so I just do the whole outside. And then go in and do the inside edge, the inside edges of the paper fabric. Which is, you know, just paper, but we're making it look like it's stitched. Then you also have an option. See, this has gone all the way around the edge. Now, you can say that sewed down the top part of this blue fabric if you were really sewing it. So you could leave it like that, or you can, if you want to, go through, because this is so small, I'm not going to do that. I have one like that. Here, this one is like that. See, with this one, I sewed all the way around the blue, and then I sewed all the way around the purple, and then all the way around the green. So each section has 2 rows of stitching, 1 row on each color paper. And then I just do 1 all the way around the outside edge. But when I do that, I usually try and kind of make it look like a little corner, you know, so it looks like that whole thing has been sewn. This one is really small. To do 2 lines of stitching would really take up a lot of the room. And so what did I just do? 2 lines worth of stitching right there. So if I do just 1 line of stitching, what I try and do is do the same portion. The bottom of the red, the bottom of the turquoise, I shouldn't have put one there, the bottom of the pink, the bottom of this red, and then I would say that that's stitched on the top of that, so we're going to put it on the blue here, and then we've got the bottom of the pink here. So there, oops, we need to put some on this piece right here. So there we go. Now we have our stitching done. And with Bubbie dolls, sometimes I give them a scarf. I like to give them a scarf, but I don't usually do anything more than that. And again, that's how I do them. So you do them however you want to. If you want to give them arms, or if you want to, let's see, I had one here that, this little scrap monster, he's got arms, and then he's got like a little toy in his hand. See, right here? So you can do all sorts of things. And the biggest thing is make sure that you remember to do your stitching and then do your black outlines, which I'll black outline this one after it's dry. And for the Bubbie doll scarves, again, I just use scrap paper. I try and do something with the contrast. Now that would look cute like that. I like that. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to kind of look at that point. And give the other side a little bit of a point just like it. I'm going to leave it pointed. I might cut it off on the edges because normally I would. But I am going to stitch around it really quick. Just so that it has its own definition, so you see it. Because if I put that on there like that, see the difference between the stitching on the pink and no stitching on the blue? It does actually, to me, it makes a difference. So there we go. Little water glue there. Put the scarf up here. Oops. And actually, before I put that scarf on there, I should have drawn around the edge, and I'm going to because I definitely want it to stand out, or it's really going to blend in. Hopefully you can't hear the dogs in the background. They are in the other room. They think they hear or saw something. So there we go. Make sure that that's still wet. Put this on here where I think it needs to be. And always kind of look at it. Don't just put it on there, but, you know, say, well, there's the chin. So where would this be? You know, so you don't want it too high. You don't want it too low. That looks like a good spot for me. I don't have to do that, but I just did because I still had the water on my brush. And so, or not water, but that. Okay, so there we go. There's that one, and here's this one, and this one is still wet, but, so see, this is what he looks like with the extra hanging off of his arms there, which I don't really like the way that looks, so I'm going to cut it off. I always do that from the back. You can see exactly where you need to cut to make it fit his body. And so there we go. I like the way that that looks better. And then we're just going to, even though he is still a little bit wet, I just want to draw around the outside. So, see the dark line on the edge, even though it's not super noticeable, it does really kind of make a difference. It kind of draws the whole thing together if you put the dark line, but you can leave it like that. You don't have to. So I just kind of wanted to show you just so you could compare what it looks like with or without. Because a lot of times I have a hard time seeing something if I, if I do the whole thing and then I think, did it look better? So a lot of times I'll do half of something and then look at it to see if I think it looks better. Now I'm going to have to kind of finish it anyways, but it lets me know for the next time, you know, was that worth doing? And I'm being in a hurry here, so I'm making a mess, but so now I've got a big black line right there. I'm not going to worry about that one. Sometimes, you know, there'll be something that you can do to fix it, like maybe glue another piece of fabric on it or whatever. I'm just going to leave that one like it is. But I think he turned out cute. I like his little arms. And I like our little Bubbie doll here. And I think with her, I might just actually leave her scarf stick out the edges like that. Because that's totally fine to do, just like all of these others. You know, some of them have little horns and that type of stuff that stick out. You don't have to, it doesn't all have to be within the boundaries of your edges. So there we go. That's today's project. We didn't have to buy anything for it. It was just in our stash for us to make. And it's something that pretty much you can always have in your stash because it's literally just scrap paper. And if you don't have any scraps left over, take just a little bit of your paint. Or even if you don't have paint, dye some with coffee, dye some with tea, you know, whatever it is you may have. Use crayons, markers, whatever. Put some kind of color on some paper and then rip it into bits. And voila, you've got little bits that you can make your scrap monsters. because we did not spend anything this week, we now have $48.75 in our bank. We didn't spend anything this week or last week. And so that is where we're sitting right now. So it's time to start thinking about another thing to purchase to put in our stash. But, you know, we'll just kind of play that by ear. But anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this project. Next week, I am going to make storage because I really need storage desperately. I have stuff just piled upon piles. So I'm going to make storage for these containers. Now, you may not have these containers, but if you have something, my husband likes, he's got on a yogurt kick, and so he likes this yogurt. And so I have a whole bunch of these, and they work really well actually to store things. So I'm going to make a shelved container that will hold a bunch of these. And then what you can do is you can cover it with a pretty piece of paper like this. When you put it on your shelf, you can cover it like that. And it doesn't have to be a yogurt container. You know what I'm saying? But if you eat Jell-O in round containers or whatever it is that you use, I'm going to show you how to make storage the way that I make it. And so what you will need is a box in the size of what you think you're going to need. Now, like this right here, I'm going to have a box that is about this deep. Okay, because you don't really want it deeper than that. If you have little round containers, like even a cereal box or something like that, you know, that's only about that wide that your containers would sit in, you know, so you'll need a box of some sort and a box that's going to fit where you want to put it. And you're going to need foam core board. That's what I'm going to use as foam core board. You can use cardboard if you have some heavy corrugated cardboard. I like to use the foam core board because it works really well the way that I build my storage. But it's going to be built inside of a box, so that's going to be our shelves and our supports. So we'll say 2 sheets of foam core board, and that's going to make you, I'm making a large storage, but that will make you quite a few storage. You could even do it with probably just one. So that's what you'll need for next week. Thank you very much for all of your support. I really do appreciate it. Please leave a comment below. If you do, and I picked this video next month. If I do pick this video and you've left a message, all those names go into a drawing and somebody wins just a little tiny mini giveaway, and the description or the link to that giveaway video will be in the description box below if you want to know what the rules are for that. So thank you very much for stopping by. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.